Welcome to the Climate Report. This is Hart Hagen, your host, and this is episode 14. We are Forward Radio, WFMP-FM Louisville. We are going to talk today about some of the specific proposals required to get us through the great transition, the transition from fossil fuels to a clean, renewable, sustainable energy system. But first, let me encourage you to support listener-supported radio by going to forwardradio.org and click on Donate. The reason this is important is that we are one of those rare sources of objective information that is not influenced by big business. Everything you get from the mainstream media, from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, even the New York Times and the Washington Post, it's all very much influenced by corporate sponsors. We don't have that here, and that's a benefit to you. It's a benefit to all of us. Listener-supported radio can help make our entire community a more vibrant, people-oriented place to live in, instead of being entirely commercialized, and instead of everything and everybody bending the knee to huge Wall Street corporations. On the one hand, I don't want to overstate the case. On the other hand, it's hard to overstate the case of how much influence huge corporations have today. They always have, but even more today. And that influence extends to the channels of communication that are supposed to be the lifeblood of a free society. We supposedly have free speech in that the government is not censoring what we say, but if big business is running the government and if big business is running the media, then we are being censored by big business. I'm not talking about small and medium business. I'm talking about huge Wall Street firms that run our country, that own our legislators. It's a huge problem, quite apart from listener-supported radio, but listener-supported radio is one small step in the right direction as far as having true, genuine, free speech in America. So let's talk about what the world will look like when we make a great transition from a world where not only our energy system but our entire economy is driven by fossil fuels. We need to move past that, because fossil fuels and the carbon that gets emitted when we overuse fossil fuels is the reason for global warming, and global warming is one of the three threats to human existence. It's not a small thing, and we need to address it. We need to deal with it. We need to be talking about it. We need to be taking actions along the right lines, but we need for that action to not be confused or sporadic. We need it to be methodical and well advised. So let's look at, I have in front of me 5 different proposals relating to clean energy and energy efficiency. So proposal number 1, solar. We need to promote the use of solar panels for home electricity generation, for commercial electricity generation. And here is a key fact and observation, and that is that solar energy is now affordable. There was an article recently in Forbes magazine that said solar energy is not only affordable for wealthy people, but also for middle class and poor in many instances. And solar is not only affordable in states where there's a lot of sunshine, but even places like Montana and Alaska have a substantial number of counties where solar energy is affordable. And this is Forbes magazine, not somebody that would report that unless it were true. So a specific proposal along these lines is that the government needs to subsidize solar energy, and even giving a refundable tax credit to low-income people. Not to get bogged down in in the nuances of tax, but let's just say a refundable tax credit is something that would not just benefit wealthy people, but would also benefit the poor and middle class. Like if your taxes are less than your solar, the amount of the solar tax credit, then you still get the full amount. It's not tilted like so much of our tax policy is tilted toward the wealthy, but a refundable tax credit would not be tilted toward the wealthy. It would be sufficiently progressive. So what's a possibility associated with this? Well, solar technology will develop faster if there is more of a demand. So what do some people say, some naysayers say, about the mere possibility of government subsidies? They say, well, we don't want to get government into this too much. We need to let the free market take care of things like this. Well, that has two severe misconceptions. One misconception is that we have a free market. We have free markets on a very small scale. The overall economy is very much driven by government spending. The direction of the economy is very much driven by government spending. Think $700 billion for the Pentagon budget, and that does not count nuclear. The government is big into the business of providing R&D, research and development, to stimulate the economy. The government has always done that ever since 1941, when we got into World War I. Prior to that, we saw with the stock market crash in 1929, we saw what happens if you just let the free market run of its own accord. It's boom and bust, and it just doesn't work very well. It's a big, fat, huge myth in this country that we have a strong economy because of the free market. We have a strong economy because of focused government spending. The greatest period of growth in the last many decades was the period of World War II. It was very focused government spending. And then after World War II, what happened was that government and business leaders and everybody else was afraid that the government would, or that the economy would, slip back into a recession because you wouldn't have all of this government spending. So what they did was that they did a couple things. One is they created the Cold War, which didn't exist, but they created the Cold War. More on that in a minute. Another thing that they did is they decided to do the highway system. The interstate highway system is not just a product of the free market. It's a product of government spending. It's a product of government decisions. It happened, the interstate highway system benefited whom? Whom did the highway system benefit? Well, I can think of two major players that the highway system benefits. One is the auto companies. Another is the oil companies. So auto companies and oil companies love the fact that we have an interstate highway system. But the point is that much of our economic growth is based on government spending and not strictly on a free market. It's not just this let the invisible hand of the free market just take care of everything. That's a religion. It's a free market religion, and it's something that's not really true. But the very wealthy want you and me to believe that it's true. Meanwhile, all the while, they're feeding at the government trough. Big banks feeding at the government trough. Fossil fuel companies, oil companies feeding at the government trough. Big agricultural businesses, big ag, heavily subsidized through research and development and through guaranteed procurement, guaranteed purchase of certain excess crops. But And also think of big retail. Think of these retail businesses that want to expand overseas. Well, how are they going to do that if they don't have the military on their side? Like Thomas Friedman of the New York Times said, McDonald's needs McDonnell Douglas. In other words, retail chains need the military. McDonnell Douglas is a manufacturer of warplanes. So McDonald's needs McDonnell Douglas. The big retail companies, the big agribusiness companies, all these companies that want free trade overseas, they depend on the U.S. military to open up the doors of these other countries against their will. So that's a form of subsidy. Oil companies are subsidized when the United States military rolls into Iraq and basically takes Iraq. And okay, it's ours now, and we can roll in here and drill oil and sell oil and keep the profits, and the Iraqi people be damned because the U.S. military rolled into Iraq and took over. That's what happened. In substance, that's what happened. We didn't go into Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction. Bush, Cheney, and Powell knew that was a lie to begin with. And then, no weapons of mass destruction, but we're here to restore democracy and freedom. Well, we know that's a lie too. Show me one country in the world where the United States actually supports democracy and freedom, and I will show you 10 countries in the world where the United States supports a brutal, fascist dictator that tortures people and makes war on people. If you think we're fighting for democracy and freedom, give me an example. And if you can give me one example since 1945, if you can give me one example of the United States supporting democracy and freedom, I will give you 10 examples where we're supporting brutality and actually making war on democracy. And why are we making war on democracy? Because we're supporting big business overseas. United Fruit Company in Guatemala, Chevron and Exxon in Iraq. The list goes on and on. And the reason that's the real reason why we taxpayers spend a lot of money on the military. It's a transfer of wealth from average people to big business. When we spend money on the military, we are transferring wealth from Main Street to Wall Street. By Wall Street, I'm referring not just to big banks, but to huge publicly traded companies that make money off of war and international trade, etc. So what does any of this have to do with solar energy? Well, we're responding to the naysayers. The naysayers say that what do they say against solar energy? Well, they say you should just let the free market take care of that. Well, that's not how our economy works. So let's just let me move on to the next item. I mean, the idea is solar, yes, and any objections to solar are just empty and inane. And solar energy needs to be funded and promoted with a great deal of government help because that's the way our economy works, despite everything we've been told to the contrary. Next proposal, home energy efficiency. Home, yes, but also commercial. We need to promote energy efficiency. And that means making heating, ventilation, and air conditioning more efficient. And that requires, one benefit of doing work like that is that you have tradespeople, colloquially known as blue-collar people, who have an area of expertise and can be put to work doing good work locally. And this is important because energy efficiency is the low-hanging fruit. The people who really have run the numbers on what it's going to take to reduce our carbon footprint, people like Kevin Anderson, who, not the tennis player, but there's another Kevin Anderson who's an energy efficiency expert. It's really good. I recommend you look him up on YouTube. People like that will say that we could reduce our carbon footprint by 20 or 30% right away by being more efficient with our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And this is a way to put skilled workers to work right away: carpenters, HVAC experts, energy efficiency specialists. And it's a way to have people like you and me saving money so that we can spend money on the local economy instead of sending our money to fossil fuel companies and big utilities. So when we talk about home energy efficiency, what values or principles come into play here? Well, efficiency, here's a principle: efficiency is good. Another principle is that saving money is good. Another principle is that you're spending more on things that are socially beneficial and less on corporate welfare. And you're spending more money on Main Street and less money on Wall Street. These are all good things. Now, the naysayers, again, are going to come into this and say, we need to let the free market take care of things. Well, I hope I've told you already why it's not about free market. The government spends huge amounts of money on research and development that has the net effect of transferring money from average people to rich people. For example, computer technology was researched for 30 years. During and after World War II, they were developing computer technology. That went on for 30 years before Steve Jobs or Bill Gates could do anything with it. So lots and lots and lots of money went into research and development of the microchip, the internet, telecommunications infrastructure. The list goes on. And it's always been seen, since 1945, it has been seen, spending through the Pentagon has been seen as a way of transferring money from the government to the wealthy. So it is just ludicrous to say that the government should not be involved. It's ludicrous to say that we just need to let the free market take care of all this. If we had let the free market take care of everything, we would not have computer technology, we would not have an internet, we would not have cell phones. So the government needs to be involved, which means you and I, citizens, need to be on top of this thing. We need to know how our government is spending money. We need to know why our government is spending money. We need to know why our government can't get enough of foreign wars. We need to know why our government can't just leave defenseless third world countries alone. Can we talk about live and let live? Can we talk about not meddling and interfering with the affairs of other countries? That would seem to be a valid and worthy principle, a valid and worthy ethic, that we should live and let live, that we should let other countries decide what's best for them. We should be saying the resources of other countries belong to the people of that country, and we don't need to roll in there and have them make decisions at the point of a gun because those decisions benefit us. If you don't think this happens all the time, then we need to talk. We could talk about Haiti. We could talk about Nicaragua. We could talk about Brazil, Argentina, or Chile. We could talk about Cuba, Puerto Rico. We could talk about Mexico, the entirety of Central America. We could talk about the Middle East. We could talk about Southeast Asia. We could talk about the South Pacific. We could talk about Africa. All over the world, third world countries are giving up their collective wealth because we are taking it from them at the point of a gun. I don't expect you to believe that just because I say it, but keep listening to this show and we will keep talking about how and where and when and why this is all happening at your expense, but you pay the cost of this worldwide empire, military and commercial empire. You pay the cost, but you don't get any of the benefits of it because the benefits of it goes to the super rich. So what I'm proposing is that instead of spending money on the military, which only benefits the super rich, the government should be spending money on solar energy, on home energy efficiency, because the free market does not take care of large-scale collective emergencies. Let's look at 1941. Let's look at, which was the beginning of World War II. Here's what we did not say. We did not say, oh, we're just going to let the free market take care of all this. No, we had something that was important to address collectively. We got busy and did it. We made sacrifices. There was rationing. There were rules about what you could and couldn't, what manufacturers could and could not do. It was a collective effort, and it was a time of the most rapid economic growth in our history. That's what we do when we have an important problem to solve together. We don't just leave it to the magic of the free market, which never existed anyway. Okay, so the next proposal that we want to look at for purposes of the great transition from fossil fuels to the future of energy, we've looked at solar energy, we've looked at home energy efficiency and even commercial energy efficiency and the advantages and benefits of those. We need to look at mass transit. We need to have more rail and more riding and less driving. Now, okay, I'm going to go. So what do the naysayers say about mass transit? Well, there's a certain element in American culture that thinks that mass transit means less freedom, that you should just be able to get in your car and fire it up and go wherever you want, whenever you want. Let's look at that. Okay, so, and we get back to the question of the free market. We need to disabuse ourselves of the idea that the free market gave us automobiles. The free market, yes, had some role in giving us automobiles, but the free market did not give us the interstate highway system. We've talked about how in the late 40s they were, government planners and big business, they were afraid that the economy would slip back into a recession. A depression. We had a depression starting in the late 20s, throughout the 30s, and the depression lasted until World War II. And then World War II brought along a great deal of government spending, and it was understood that we would need to continue to have government spending in order to continue to have a robust economy. So, does government spending mean social spending or military spending or spending on infrastructure? And it was decided that it would be primarily spending on military and the highway system. Even the highway system had the act that enacted the interstate highway system had the word defense in it somewhere, just to give it some legitimacy in terms of protecting us from the evil communists. And you have to make, if you're going to get Americans on board with government spending, then you have to make them think it's because you're protecting them from foreign invaders and communists and things like that. So we have the automobile and urban sprawl and a huge highway system because of government decisions and government spending. And of course, where there are big government decisions being made, business is somewhere in the picture, probably making a lot of those decisions. So it's not about a free market economy. It's about government and big business working together and making key decisions. The question is, do we want them making decisions like that? Are government expenditures going to be solely for defense, which is based on a series of profound lies, like the profound lie that says we are under threat, we are under attack?
Here's what I found on the web for what percent am I found alive.
So are we going to take control as citizens in a democracy? Are we going to take control of government spending, or are we going to let big business, I'm not talking about small and medium business, I'm talking about big business. Big business, by the way, is the enemy of small and medium business. If you're a small or medium-sized business person and you think big business is on your side and you vote however you vote because you think you're voting for business, but you're really voting for big business, then we need to talk. But we need to decide as a society, if the majority of people are going to take charge of government spending, or whether we're going to be awash in lies that say, oh, we just leave it up to the free market, and that's what the oligarchs want you to think. They want you to think that they want you to be subject to a free market, meanwhile they're feeding at the government trough. So I'm going into all this stuff about free market and government spending because these are the objections that we have to get past in the public arena. We have to counter people have been brainwashed into thinking that America is wealthy because of the free market. Well, there's just so many reasons why that's not true. But let me address this issue. For people who think that mass transit would take away your freedom, let me ask you this. Let's say you have a 1-hour commute each way. Would you rather do that 1-hour commute letting somebody else drive? Or would you rather be behind the wheel? Maybe you enjoy driving. That's your business. But some people would like to choose mass transit and let somebody else do the driving while they read, relax, meditate, whatever it is they want to do. A lot of people who are opposed to mass transit have never used mass transit. So that's about all we have time for on this episode of the Climate Report. Join me next time when we'll be talking about how and why. You'll never believe this, but it would be quite practical to cut the defense budget by, pull a number out of the air, 90%. Quite practical. First I was going to say 50%, and then I'd say, why do we need that other 50%? And then I was going to say 75%. Why do we need that other 20%, 25%? I'm going to go out on a limb, not even go out on a limb. I'm going to take and defend the position that we need to cut the defense budget by 90%, and here's why and here's why it'll be a good thing and not a bad thing. Thanks very much for joining me. Tune in next time.